Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Now, when we last left, I left you on a cliffhanger. Did Matthew Broussard show up? Of course he showed up. I don't know. I was throwing him under the bus. Of course he showed up. He was fantastic. We did about 45 minutes raw with we had a technical snafu in the middle, so I'll take the break there. What happened was he had his ring light plugged in, but not his phone, and his phone ran all the way down to 0. So all of a sudden you'll hear him drop out mid-sentence. I'll explain that when we get to it. He's got a new special. It is called Hyperbolic. It is his full-length debut special. In Hyperbolic, Matthew Broussard dives into painfully personal experiences growing up Cajun-Jewish in a WASPy Southern prep school, the challenges of millennial masculinity as the bread loser to a former pro athlete, and candid stories about mental health struggles in his family, plus some oddly keen sidebars into grammar, etymology, pharmaceutical origin stories, and statistics. If you've heard me interview comedians in the past, this is a typical ride. We'll get into the structure of comedy. We'll talk a little crowd work, feeding the beast, his favorite comedians, some comedy snobbery on my part. He turned me on to some people that weren't on my radar, and really enjoyed Matthew Broussard. Where are you today?
I'm in my apartment in Brooklyn, and sitting here. My fiance's out taking her parents to the museum, so thank you for giving me an excuse to bail on in-law entertainment.
How'd you wind up in Brooklyn?
By way of Corpus Christi, Atlanta, Houston, LA, and then ended up here.
To work comedy out of New York as opposed to LA?
Yeah, so I was dating my fiance who lived in Austin. I lived in LA, and we wanted a place where we could both kind of do the best version of the careers we were seeking.
So she was a swimmer. You were a swimmer. Did you guys meet as swimmers or did you meet as comics?
No, she was a swimmer. I did not swim on that level. I swam as a recreational swimmer. She was like a professional
with old
swimmer.
Dudes. I read an article.
Yeah.
Old dudes like me in the pool and you.
Yes. I worked for the swim team in college, so I kind of knew of her through swimming. She knew of me through friends in swimming and comedy. But yeah, just I was mostly I found her because she was a pro swimmer who I was a fan of and thought was very attractive.
So did you get her into comedy, or is that just an independent thing?
Independent thing. I would say it's more she liked me because she was interested in comedy and was doing improv when we met.
Do you do shows together?
Yes. So she comes and features for me on the road.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and it's pretty fun. We started doing Q&A at the end of the shows. It's neat. I have to tweak my set a little bit because there's just no world in which you
Tell me more.
There's no world in which you don't know. Even people can be very stupid. People can be very smart. Most people understand when one comic is here from New York City who's featuring. Well, they didn't fly here to do 20 minutes, so clearly they may have come along with the headliner, and that we are the same age and share a lot of the similar demographics. It's not unreasonable to assume that we are partners. And even beyond that, the biography, the dual biography, you'd have to be pretty dense to not figure out that my professional swimmer fiance turned comedian was not her. Though some crowds have very much surprised me. I've had people after the show, after I've said everything, go, so just question, I noticed she mentioned a lot of the things you mentioned. Was that your fiance? Like they're Sherlock Holmes. And
do you guys get along in terms of like if you do fiance jokes? Does she understand the difference between the character of the fiance, or does that spill over back to Brooklyn?
I think we all get it. We have to, you have to kind of force some details through for the sake of narrative and character. And you might have to embellish details. And I think we both understand that. And there are things that are said about us that are not accurate, but luckily we go up there and get to represent ourselves. So I would say better than in most relationships where the other partner has no voice besides the mocking impression. I have been really trying in my comedy to be extremely truthful. I do try to keep the stories pretty accurate. So at least on a detailed space, especially about my mom. I have a lot of stories about my mom on the special that are my favorite jokes, and it feels like cheating because I don't have to make up anything. The details all happened as I told them, sometimes even a little more ridiculous than the story I told. And my mom doesn't like certain details. I read a note she wrote on stage. That's the one pushback I've ever gotten from her.
Oh, what did she say?
She doesn't like it. She sent this note, and you can, if you want to hear the note, I think it's my favorite thing I've ever talked about on stage is this note. It's the funniest thing I think I've ever accomplished. But the note is from my mom to my fiance for her birthday. And I told her, hey, I'm going to read this on stage. She goes, okay, fine, whatever you want to do. I don't get why it's funny. And then she came to a show where I read it out loud and she heard everyone laughing. And she still can't understand why it's funny. She still can't understand why people are laughing at this thing. She goes, are they laughing at me? And I have to explain to her, no, they're more laughing at how earnest you are. It's not that anyone thinks, it's that people feel the things you're feeling. It's just so rare and interesting and funny to hear them so baldly expressed. I mean, there's a lot of stories about my mom that I have, and a lot of stories about my parents that I have in my back pocket that I don't realize are good for comedy until I just tell them to someone. And I realize they are not a normal experience.
Do you have a home club where you work stuff out?
A home club is the cellar, but I don't work out stuff there.
Sure.
Yeah. I work out stuff more on the road. So when I have a full hour, that's where I tend to stretch out. There's that strange fallacy that just work it out in the city, take it to the road. Absolutely opposite. The road, there's so much more leeway. They're already there to see you, whereas the club is just, in the city is so competitive. It's like, I don't even know if it's a great training ground. I think it's more of a showcase. It's where you go to prove yourself every night, not to improve yourself.
So how will you work things in? Are you like, say, I don't know, 38 minutes in playing stuff that lands and you're like, all right, I'm feeling the moment here. Let me just try something.
Couch it where you know it's safe. Feel the momentum. And when you have it, be ready for it to all go away very quickly when your new joke doesn't work. And learn how to sneak things in where it fits. Because a lot of time, the best jokes I have wouldn't work by themselves. It's just that they're propped up by a lot of material around it. So it's that structuring. And then sometimes I've started to do a little thing where I just kind of tell the crowd, this is the new section, and just have all those kind of fail safes for when it misses, just go, well, that did not work the way I hoped. And, usually get a little laugh.
Yeah, because as an audience member, we're all in it together, especially if you tell us like, hey, I'm trying stuff out here and you make the Bob Hope face of, oops, that didn't land.
Yeah.
That's fun to be in the room.
Yes. The more successful you are, the more you get away with that. I have bachelorette parties who never didn't know who I was when they bought the tickets and probably won't again after the show, who don't have the patience for my artistic process.
So you talked about dropping something into a successful set. I've really been on my soapbox this year. That TikTokization of comedy now of, here's crowd work or here's a good slam. And I feel like we're starting to lose the art of an arc.
Man, yeah, buddy. I'm already a member of this church. You don't need to preach to me. It upsets me. I go back and forth because on one hand, the modular form joke is a strength of mine. I am not a full-on Jeselnik Mark Normand, but I do have jokes that I can extract 30 to 90 seconds in length that are a good meal, a full piece of comedy, and that has served me very well on social media, and that I have modular form jokes. I didn't get into comedy to do that. I like jokes that pay off. Just kind of, you get a sense of completion, a couple laughs, and a good circularity that a joke requires. But this special was, I debated if it was worth doing. I'm still debating if it's worth doing. I'm going to be able to extract a lot of clips out of it. But if you watch it, I think there's going to be structure and arc. It's not a full hour structure, but there are 3 chunks that each kind of have their own theme to it. And this is not meant to be studied. This is not meant to be like some, you'll feel the theme or you won't. And if you're even watching it passingly, I think there's a real good density of jokes throughout. So I don't know. I don't like that shortening of attention span. I do think you kind of, things move in cycles. I think that attention span kind of hit the bottom, kind of hit that plank length, and now it's kind of broadening back out. And I would attribute Josh Johnson's success to that, as well as his talent. But Josh Johnson is going so far the other way now, and I think there's an appetite for something that's more than 12 seconds.
Sure.
And
I get too close to it as somebody who is a fan and studies this. I recently went to see Craig Ferguson, and he made a random reference like 8 minutes in, and the back of my brain spent the next 40 minutes going, he's going to bring that back. He's going to bring that back. Yeah. And my wife's just sitting there as a civilian enjoying a good show, and I'm analyzing the structure in my head, and like sometimes that drives me insane when I do that.
Yeah, turn off the left brain. Yeah. The Chekhov. I love that you can spot the Chekhov's guns. of,
Yeah,
of
that's a good way
stand-up
to put it.
comedy. Yeah, that's exactly what that is. That's funny. There's comics. I mean, I don't mind you can feel your left brain working. It's like I imagine how like a coach feels watching a game when you watch another comedian. Who are the comedians where your left brain turns off and you start to feel like you're not a comedian?
So the tree that starts with Stephen Wright through Hedberg into Dimitri and whoever else you want to put on that tree, that's sort of just random. Like, oh, your brain works differently than me.
Galifianakis, and I would say right now, Casey Rocket is probably the greatest successor.
Oh, I don't know Casey. I'm going to check Casey out immediately.
Oh,
Love
yeah.
it.
But
Love it. But yeah, I'll get too close to it, and I'll see okay, that happened. That's exaggerated for effect. That didn't happen at all, but it's funny. Like, and I hate that part of it. So I like going for the ride. When I get a belly laugh of someone saying something that I didn't at all see coming, I treasure it.
Yes, that's a wonderful feeling. I had that with what's his name? Chad Daniels joke this week. And he's such a traditional comic and a very good comic, but he had a punchline that it just knocked me on my ass because it was couched in such a traditional joke about men and women and parents and marriages that when I heard the punchline, it just got me. I would like to think in terms of what does your brain look like? Casey Rocket's great, but he's already more successful than me. So what am I getting out of this? Andrew Casertano is a name that I hope everyone starts hearing more. It is that true alt, weird, but still kills in a club. Andrew Casertano. That's a great name that I'd recommend to you. Sean Patton does that for me. Sean Patton's the guy where I lose track of what's the structure, what's the pattern, and just kind of enjoy myself because he seems to be on a ride every set, especially live. There's no game plan. There's no map, or not one that I can see. And if there is one, I don't know how he's so good.
The one I loved this year, my favorite bit of the year is Kyle Kinane's chunk on Fast and Furious, just because he gets up a full head of steam and it's just fun.
Yeah, he can have such strong opinions on such minutia. And I mean, his Trader Joe's bit is one of my favorite of all time because it builds off of just a small inspiration. He builds characters and a scene. Do you know that one from, I think it was like his first or second album? Might be from Death of the Party, like his first album. Yeah.
Yeah. As we're talking about studying it, I had the pleasure of working with the Carlin estate, put together George Carlin Radio for Sirius in another life. And his manager, Jerry Hamza, sat down. And what we tried to do at the station was build the sets the way George did, Carlin did. And George Hamza, the manager, explained to me, like, he couldn't just come out and do these big arcs. So Carlin would come out and do a bunch of rat-a-tat-tat jokes for a couple minutes and then do the long arc. And it really educated me on changing speeds, changing volume, taking the audience for that ride. But you can't just, I love him, but I saw Stephen Wright one time, and Stephen Wright for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, oh my God, I love him. For an hour and 10, my brain was mush.
It's tough.
And I'm not here to bash Stephen, but it was just like, I can't anymore.
I hear you. Ronnie Chang gave me a good long lesson about how to build a good hour. It's 20 minutes of rat-a-tat, and then it was 20 minutes of kind of a more themed joke, and then a 20-minute story to take it home. And each of those tasks are circulating to me, but you're right. You have to, not every. So when I started comedy, the real pie in the sky was late night. That was the thing we all wanted to do. 5 minutes for Conan or Fallon or it was Leno and Letterman or whatever. And you thought about doing a perfect 5-minute set. And I had the impression that a lot of young comics have is that a great hour is 12 late night sets. And that's just impossible. I don't know anyone who's really done that. I don't know the brain could handle that. The consumer can handle that. I think a lot to Kumail Nanjiani's first and only special, Beta Male, where he does 30 minutes very observational, pretty run of the mill, and then 30 minutes of just one pretty long story. Oh, and Jesus, Hannibal Buress, who's really one of my top. He's maybe my favorite. My favorite special of all time is Animal Furnace, but he has that Miami Nights, which is hard to find now. He does kind of 25 minutes up top of his traditional style. It's great, but you know Hannibal, so it doesn't knock you on your ass the way it used to. And you're like, okay, well, that's okay. And then at the minute 25, he tells a 35-minute story that is just in top gear the entire time. It's just such an incredible special. It doesn't slow down. You think, how can this story keep producing more plot points and laughs? And it's cool to see an artist evolve. I remember when Jeselnik, the second half of like, what was it? The Thoughts and Prayers, where he turns the story over to the death threats, his family, and that whole thing. I love seeing when comics can change gears. I love seeing when any artist can move away from a genre they've perfected into a scarier new realm and still succeed. I'm always rooting for the artist and whatever new stuff they're trying.
Yeah, absolutely. You run the risk of the fans turning on you, though.
Always, but you got to make what you like, or you might as well have a desk job.
I'll tell you, I was one of the people, and I was wrong, who, when the late period Carlin stuff came out, I didn't like it. I thought it was angry. It just didn't.
I don't like it either.
20 years later, he's the great prophet of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. It's just, you play that stuff and it's like, oh, did you record this earlier today, even though you've been dead for 15 years?
Yeah.
But at the time, wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, Hicks as well, too. I am in my current, well, you know what? They're both dead. I'm not a huge fan of their preachy late stuff. It doesn't do as much for me. I loved it as a kid, but it's, I like a little more lightheartedness. Though after Trump winning, I am not a fan of Trump. I do currently value a little more explicit point of view from people whose politics I agree with. I've been listening to people on stage be a little more upfront about their anger and disappointment with things, and it is quite soothing when your girl just lost.
So for your particular style, I would be surprised if I went to see you tonight and you did political material, but are you letting your feelings, are you telegraphing it to the audience, or it's just not what you do?
I don't think I would be surprised if anyone couldn't figure out my political leanings after 20 minutes of comedy, but I'm not overt with it. I don't think it's the place for it for me. We're all kind of a little, I have done a lot of political comedy that I've put out. I put out a set with Comedy Central that was pretty overt, and I've not really taken that tone before. And it was well received online. I haven't felt the urge to go after it again. I kind of did it more as a therapy, and it served me well. This new hour is not very political. Little politics on the stage, but it's not as fun to address head on. It's like a lot of things. It's fun if it comes into this fray, but right now I'm talking more about myself and stories. And
I happened to be at New Faces in 2015 when you went up.
Oh, wow.
You were one of them that popped. I pulled the list right before I jumped on with you, but I definitely remember you because, you did your I'm handsome villain from the movies joke, and I always remembered it.
Never used the word handsome, by the way. Never have I once used that word on stage. A lot of people...
correct me.
No, it's okay, but a lot of people say that I said that about myself, and I'm like, I can't use that word. If I use that word, I would lose the crowd. It's good you heard that word because that's what I'm hoping to imply. But the word handsome has never kind of come out of my mouth self-referentially on a stage, at least not in many years, because the few times it has not served me well.
You are a handsome
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I appreciate that. I'm glad you think so.
How was that experience for you? So at that point, if you're doing New Faces, you're not signed, right? You're like pretty new into this. How do you even get New Faces?
I was signed.
Okay. So what happened right there? That's when he got disconnected. So I just, sat around for a couple minutes and, let's pretend that I just talked to myself and told you about his special Hyperbolic, which is on YouTube, December 10th. That's Tuesday. Anyway, it kind of works out because I have to chop up the interview and stick the commercial somewhere anyway. So I might as well stick it here. Be right back. All right. When I last left you, I had said to Matt, hey, you weren't repped at that time, and he was correcting me, and then his phone cut out. So where we're picking up the conversation is Johnny Mac stupidly said at New Faces you weren't repped, and he was correcting me, saying, no, he did have an agent and hadn't had one for about 5 years, if I'm remembering correctly. And then I said something like, oh, yeah, I was confused between New Faces and unrepped. Anyway, let's jump back into the conversation. The last thing I heard was you had been signed. So you're reminding me I'm mistaken, obviously.
No.
So there's a different show called Unrepped.
Right.
So New Faces, you're repped, and then there's Unrepped, but you were New Faces.
That's right. I was New Faces regular. The whole system's a scam, and everyone's pushed in through their agents, and people who get it aren't exactly getting a big break. They've already made it, and they're just being... JFL makes it so someone can take credit for discovering someone who's already very well on their way. I will tap dance on that grave until they have power to give me something else, and I need to play nice again. But
Well, they're back.
oh yeah, cool, good for them. Yeah, I had auditioned. It was my third time, so I got it pretty quick. I had auditioned in Austin when I was maybe 2 years into comedy, and then I auditioned again once my first year in LA and didn't get it, but I felt pretty good. In my third year, I auditioned and got it. And I had I'd been on Comedy Central once, and I had some stuff going on with MTV and E, mostly MTV, and I got it and went there and did it. And it was the next year that things took off for me more. So a year after that, I did Conan and Roast Battle in the same summer. And that was a big break for me. The JFL was a weird time for me because I did the set, and I remember the set being fine. I remember not loving how it went, but knowing it probably went good enough. But that being one of the lackluster parts of the week for me, they signed me up for Roast Battle because there's every comic who goes there, they're supposed to give you another set to do while you're there, and they didn't have one for me, so they put me in a roast battle. I had no real experience with it, and I was annoyed because I wanted to do stand up. I didn't want to write jokes about another person. And the first night it went really poorly. I went against Jack Knight, and we were both trying to lose, and he won at losing. And that meant I went from the 16 down to the top 8. So I had to do it again, and I didn't want to do it, and I was going to skip it. And Jeff Ross was like, please. So I wrote 4 jokes pretty quick, went up and did them. And that night went well. I had some momentum, and I won that night. And then the third night, now I'm down to the top 4. Exponential Decay is pretty strong. And that night was the best night of my life because Roast Battle was at like midnight. So there was no other shows competing with it. At JFL, you have a couple dozen shows a day for a month. All these showcases and weird hours all day, all long shows. And at midnight, everyone's done. So all the comics and all the agents and all the industry come to this roast battle. There's a really fun thing to watch if you do comedy or are around comedy, or a lot of people love it, just love it. I had agents. My agents couldn't get in to see it by the third night. It was that big of an event, and I had all this pressure on my shoulder. I was staying up till 6 writing. I was doing everything I could to have 5 jokes ready. I went against K. Shever Wilson. He did really, really well. I love him. I did a little bit better, and I went on to the final round against Jimmy Carr, and that was where
how'd that go?
yeah, exactly. He's pretty good at that kind of stuff, mean short jokes. But the third night was the night that my people started to know who I was in the industry because everyone was watching and everyone was rooting for me because I was the underdog. I was the American who kind of came out of nowhere, who had nothing else to his name. So you always kind of root for the little guy in a roast battle. And that was a big turn for me. I still don't really consider myself like a roast or a roast battle comic. But I do like jokes.
I feel like the next Netflix, I'm living in the past, Netflix roast will be hard to perform at because the Tom Brady roast did crush. I watched that live, and it was very funny.
I wrote for some of that. I wrote for, I won't name who, but you could easily figure it out, one of the comedians up there.
I just feel like the bar is going to be so high and the expectations are going to be so high. That might be one to sit out, other than the paycheck.
Yeah, it was really good. It did really well. I did not expect it would be. They put a lot into making it a very good thing. I mean, it was bloated. They could have used half the number of people up there. So next time they'll probably have 40 different people and it'll be 7 hours long. But yeah, I think the next one's going to be, as long as they invest in good writers and good talent, I think they could bring that back, because I think the celebrity roast and roast battle are things that will always have a great audience. And right now there's no real form for roast battle, and I hope someone brings that back.
I'm not waxing your car here, but that New Faces set, it was really good. I'm looking at the list, and there were some people on there. Now, I saw all 20. I don't remember seeing, say, Langston Kerman or Alex Edelman, who've had great careers. Remember you. Mm-hmm. I remember Vlad Campagno. I thought he would be further along than maybe he is right now. Me too. I thought Vlad crushed that night.
Yeah.
I do remember John Rudnitsky.
Yeah.
He got SNL off that, but I think Lorne used him in like 3 sketches. And
John Rudnitsky, I want to tell, that's a great story because no one, and I don't think a lot of people expected him to get that. He was on his way as an actor or doing okay as an actor at that point. He came up to me and we were doing all of our JFL stuff, which is miserable. You do these early, you do a prelims competition and a regular competition, and the crowds are bad, and you get 3-minute sets or whatever. And John said, I think I'm going to do something different. And I said, John, you don't want to take a risk with this. Do your best material. That's it. He goes, no, I got this new thing now where it's all music and I don't say anything. And I go, okay, good luck, John. Best of luck to you. Your funeral kind of thing. And he goes up there and he did the Flashdance song. That was it. He just danced to the Flashdance song. Doesn't say a freaking word the whole time. And he had the best set of anyone on that show. On the showcases, all of it. And that set, without using one word, got him SNL. So pretty neat set in the history of JFL.
It was solid. All right. So I was on Threads, just on Threads, because I get some comedy news there. And I was laughing at the timing. I see you, whatever we do on Threads, tweet, whatever you did. You're right. I'm having trouble getting booked on comedy podcasts right now because they're busy influencing geopolitics. And I'm like, this poor guy just got booked on my dumb show 10 minutes ago by the publicist. So, I mean, I don't care about that. Totally get it. Are you having trouble getting booked?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of rejections I'm getting. Man, oh, boy. I feel like a high schooler again. I'm sending, messages to very successful comics who some I'm friends with, some I'm not. Getting no's or getting ignored. It's it hurts real bad. I don't know at what point in your life you have enough success to stop feeling rejection. Like got turned down to prom or don't get to sit at the cool kids table. But man, oh man, that feeling is as raw as it ever was. Yeah. And some of these people I reached out to had JD Vance or Trump on their podcast lately. So you can put that together. So okay. I guess it makes sense that I'm not the top of their list. A guy who has a modest following on Instagram and hasn't been on TV in 5 years is not exactly, prime real estate of the YouTube
I guess they
world.
don't want to pre-tape for the holidays and take some time off.
Yeah, but it's insane to me how outsized the influence of comedy podcasts has become. It's like, who's really the mainstream media at this point?
Well, yeah, the big media conspiracy. I've worked in radio and media adjacent for 30 years now. I've never actually run into the conspiracy. It's dudes like me running things, and like we just show up and go, all right, what should we make today?
I know. I'm a Jew. I feel the same way. And that was another thing of people doing roast battle. These were just murmurs online. People were like, oh, was it rigged? Did they rig roast battle? And I'm like, I would be thrilled if they had enough organization to even consider rigging things. No one checked my jokes. I walked out there. I said them. There was no plan. There's not enough people making money to rig things, to choose who won it. Buddy, I'm happy if they pronounce my name correctly.
Take one more break. We'll come back with Matthew in a second. His new special, Hyperbolic, out December 10th. So I promise I won't devolve this into just reading what you posted on social media, but you had one other one that spoke to me because I think the point is so on. You wrote, want to know how hard it is to be a woman? People hate Yoko Ono more than Mark David Chapman. And I was like, wow, he's right.
Dude, people hate Yoko Ono so much. They hate him so much. Yeah, it's crazy how much people hate women. And I always knew it was bad, but in comedy in particular, just read the comment section on YouTube of any woman doing comedy. My fiance, I've watched her do comedy, and just the response just what women have to deal with, especially online, but even in person. I noticed it with myself I open on the road for bigger comics, and sometimes we end up in more rural places. And a lot of my jokes are built where I make fun of women, and then I will kind of flip it around and make fun of men just for the sake of symmetry, just because it's a great structure to have things kind of collapse back in on themselves. And, when I perform in a city, I hear the men laughing at the part making fun of women, and then I do the joke about the men, and I hear the women kind of get their ha-ha, we win in the end. And when I'm on the road, you see those crowd laugh too hard at the part about the women. And when I make fun of men, no one laughs, not even the women. Women hate women. It's nuts. It's crazy. I think it's these young incel men who just have no place in the world. And there's all this more women are kind of catching up in education and in income, and young men aren't taking it well. And I have some sympathy for them, but on the other hand, the hatred is just so misplaced.
So the new special is called Hyperbolic. I could have looked it up, and I'm like, I don't think I know what the word means because I'm stupid. What does it mean?
Of or relating to hyperbola or hyperbole, whatever the plural is, which is the opposite of a circle. X squared minus y squared equals 1. It's a great word. It also has another meaning, which people are probably more versed with, but I like that word a lot. And I'm not going to say too much about why it's called that, but one of my goals was for my first 2 things released to be adjectives. My first album was called Pedantic. This is called Hyperbolic, and that is a nod to Raw and Delirious by
Nice.
Eddie Murphy. I love that he went with adjectives, and I wanted to do my own adjectives that represented me. And I find those to be, I am neither raw nor delirious, but I can be very pedantic, and I happen to sometimes be hyperbolic.
If you're of a certain age, those are 2 wonderful specials. People my age, I could probably do half that album from memory.
And people my age are more influenced by that album, even if they've never listened to it, those albums, than they could ever know.
So the special's out on the 10th on
the 10th,
YouTube,
yeah.
right? The date moved a little bit, but it's the 10th is on YouTube.
Tuesday. Yes.
Is that the best way to distribute now? The Netflix money's kind of backed off a little bit. Hulu seems to have picked a lane.
Netflix didn't offer me anything until I have a big fan base there, and they won't. Hulu, I think we showed it to Hulu. They didn't make. I don't know. I would do Netflix, but I wanted the freedom of YouTube. I wanted to be able to put the clips up and control it and have kind of build my audience off of it. And it truly is an experiment. To see if people will like long form, if you have liked anything I've done, and if you would like to see something more developed for attention spans longer than 10 seconds, please watch it. I really tried to make sure it stayed entertaining all the way through, and I think if you listen to the whole thing through, you'll get more than just watching my comedy one Instagram reel at a time. So that's my mission here, is to hopefully make people a little less stupid.
I'm looking forward to that one. You've been very generous with your time. Last one I want to ask you about, going down your IMDb as just part of the general prep. Your role as comic number 2 at Stage Deli.
Yes.
Ticked me off. No one can be bothered to give this character a name. We can't just call the comic Matt or something. Like, it's just like, what is that?
I mean, buddy, I have no complaints about that. That was one of the best days of my life. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Yeah, I auditioned for it. I had taken a class with the casting director, and I learned that show is word perfect, meaning you do the script exactly as it's written, which not many shows are like that. And the dialogue is basically as fast as you can talk, and that helped me get the part. And woke up at 6 a.m., went down to the diner on the Upper West Side, and it's a real place. Rachel Brosnahan and Alex Bornstein ran their lines, and I sat there and ate pancakes and said, what was it? I know the whole exchange still. Joke worked great in Boston, Philly. I get to Denver, nothing. It's a regional joke. My sandwich joke, I have a different region in every city. Which sandwich is funniest? Hoagie. Hoagie is a funny sandwich. That's the whole exchange. That was really cool. It's the first show that I've been a fan of and then got to be on. And it's a great show.
Is it hard reading or performing exactly someone else's words? When I was at the podcast company, they were doing a doc, and they asked me to voice a cop, and I couldn't just, and I'm just some dude, but like, I couldn't just read the written words. I'm like, I wouldn't speak this way. I just tweak this one word. No. I can only imagine on a TV show.
Right. It's very exact. I remember Rachel ran her lines before we all went to, hair and makeup and wardrobe. And she was already off book. She already had 3 pages memorized for that scene. And at one point she said, I just know when I'm up there on the stage or that stage. And they corrected her on that stage versus on the stage. That's how particular they are. It's very hard to say it. A lot of projects let you kind of word it for yourself, but often there's some importance to the wording they chose. I mean, I think that's what makes great actors, though. They can deliver lines that wouldn't naturally come out of their mouths.
I'm in the union of people who interview comedians, so by law, I have to just throw out some topics at you. Feel free to pass
Cancel
on all
culture.
Cancel culture, trans, Joe Rogan, your pick, or pass on all three.
Cancel culture. These blue-haired, whiny liberals who get offended at everything. I'm still looking for them because I live in Brooklyn, and these things that people describe, I don't see them happening. I don't see people storming up and getting out, walking out of clubs over things that are only mildly offensive. This feels like some kind of unicorn that Fox News has created. It's not real. It's not, I don't see it. I've seen maybe a couple things in 2020 when everyone was very sensitive. But for the most part, I go up in front of crowds of educated liberals here in New York City and try to push buttons. My comedy is not tame. I do like to walk the line, and sometimes they don't laugh, but rarely do people shout and hoot and call clubs and venues I'm booked at to try to get me canceled. So it feels like a boogeyman that a lot of people have created to make themselves more important.
I do have one more real question. So I'm hearing from audience, from comics, that audience members are now trying to be helpful. And since you're going to post crowd work clips, let me be a helpful audience member and heckle you so you can slam me, and then you'll have a clip. Are you running into that?
A little bit. I think people are just worse behaved lately, and we're in the middle of a comedy bubble, which means a lot of people who don't necessarily normally consume comedy are now at clubs, and that means they don't know how to behave. And a lot of uncultured people think it's okay to shout out things during a comedy show. Stand-up comedy is a fragile art form that only thrives if the consumers respect it. And I am resentful of these crowd work comedians who have trained audiences to be bad audience members and reward people for doing the thing we hate most. I'm running into a little bit of it, but I'd like to think people who watch my clips understand that that's not exactly the way I would like the show to go. And if they sit patiently, they will be rewarded because I try really hard to write clever and thoughtful things. And for some of those comedians, I've heard stories that some of these comedians who have posted a lot of crowd work clips and are getting audiences now are having trouble doing material because that's the only thing people know them for. And I revel in their demise. You made your bed, now sleep in it. You could have taken the hard bath and written good jokes, but instead you took the easy path. Also, I'm very bad at crowd work, so I'm resentful of people who can do it well. That's mostly what I'm mad at. I'm terrible at listening. I can't come up with stuff that quickly.
Super. You don't have your bag of tricks, your go-to slam?
No, I don't. I should. Do you?
I appreciate your time today. No, I'm just a jerk with a podcast. I hope you enjoyed him as much as I did. Matthew Broussard, Hyperbolic, on YouTube, December 10th. He's fantastic. And that is your comedy news for today. Normal episode tomorrow. If you like the show, tell a friend about it. Hopefully they'll like it too. If you're a publicist who works for Hulu, get back to me. See, I can do this kind of thing with your specials. You can get 45 minutes of publicity. Why don't you get back to me? I'm nice. See you tomorrow.